everybody. Welcome back to EDBEAT. I'm April Cummings with Cayman Live TV. And of course, this is Patrick Brendel from Cayman Current.
Good morning, April. How are you?
I am good. I hope everyone had a great Easter. I ate lots of hard-boiled eggs because, we can't throw those out after the fact. We have a guest with us today on EDBEAT, which is very exciting. And I'm going to let Patrick do the honors while I bring our guest in just a moment. Patrick, take it away.
Yes, on this very special edition of EDBEAT, our guest today is Mark Ray, who has been in the Department of Education Services and the Ministry of Education in Cayman since 2007. And right around the beginning of this current school year in fall 2021, Mark was named the Director of DES. And so we're going to focus on a couple of important major initiatives that the government rolled out in public schools this year, which is the Laptop and Internet Connectivity Initiative, and also the Free School Meals Program. And if we have enough time, we're going to touch upon the topic of learning loss in students during COVID-19 and what they're seeing at the school and system level.
All right, so let's bring Mark in. Good morning, Mark. Thanks for joining us.
Good morning, guys. How are you doing? Thanks for having me.
We are so glad to have you. All right, internet willing, let's get this show on the road.
Sounds good.
Mark, I gotta say though, you do look a little fuzzy around the edges, so it's okay. We're giving you the filter, the Sybil Shepherd filter.
Okay, all right. Well, whatever you can do to make me look better, April, I trust you.
Oh, that's a dangerous thing. All right, so Patrick, I'm going to let you kickstart the questions this morning. And we should point out that there's been a lot going on in education for the past couple of years. There always is, but definitely a couple of areas that Patrick and Cayman Current have focused, I think, quite heavily on. And I would call it under the category of just sort of accountability and keeping track of, how we're doing.
Right. So going forward, so first I wanted to talk about one of the big initiatives that arose during and as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, when all of a sudden everybody was sent home from school in spring 2020, was really the need to update and upgrade the technology and communications technology in school. Which eventually resulted in a major public-private partnership that every student in the public school system gets a device. And with that, there was also making sure that students' homes had good access to broadband internet, and then upgrading the internet infrastructure in the schools. So it's a major program, millions of dollars. That we can call student laptops, which kind of oversimplified. But one thing I've been wanted to talk about is what is the government's, since there's a big initiative affecting a lot of students and teachers. I've been reading in the Education Standard School Inspection reports, anecdotally, almost every school goes out of their way to mention what a positive thing this laptop program has been. But kind of from a more objective, higher viewpoint, what are the government's metrics to gauge the success of the laptop program? Really, what are the outcomes you're trying to achieve? How does that measured? And what's it looking like right now? Another way of putting it is, what does success look like and how's it going?
Sure. Well, thanks for that. And I think you put it well in context, because one of the big challenges we had once we went into lockdown, of course, was how do we continue to engage students in their learning? And the other big thing that popped up almost immediately after that was recognizing that their emotional and mental well-being is so critical and important, and how families are dealing with that. And not just families of students, but certainly our teachers and their families as well. So the laptops played a really critical part in first and foremost keeping us connected. We utilized them straight off the bat to engage in lessons. We found a variety of ways to do that, and schools had different strategies and different platforms to do that at the very beginning of our lockdown. And one of the lessons learned, I'm kind of jumping ahead, I guess, to a lesson learned as we talk through the kind of go through the chronological narrative of this, is that we really needed to customize and standardize on a single sort of platform, so that we're doing apples with apples, making sure everyone was getting access to all the right resources, and making sure that at the end of the day, we weren't reliant on something that might be free today and paid tomorrow. And so one of the early lessons learned was that we really needed to standardize. And that ties into sort of how we're kind of looking at the metrics, because we identified a number of key performance indicators that would kind of gauge how the laptop initiative, to put it in its broadest terms, but you're right, Patrick, it was way more than just laptops, right? But how that initiative really would have an impact on our students. And one of the metrics, of course, would have been number of lessons delivered through Zoom, through Seesaw, number of sessions engaged, the pieces of work submitted by students. So those are some of the metrics that we kind of identified to say, well, this gives a gauge on how the tools are being utilized effectively as resources. Because at the end of the day, they're tools, right? Like any other educational tool. But what we quickly learned is that the laptops also played another critical role in terms of parental engagement and involvement. So schools were able to keep in touch with parents. They were able to facilitate, their HSA meetings, PTA meetings, and you saw very high levels of engagement with PTA meetings being held via the devices. Now, we don't pin that down only to the device, because certainly everyone wants to know about what's going on. Well, when are we coming out of this thing? So people were very engaged in those early meetings, but certainly the laptops helped, because their parents might be reluctant to come in person to a meeting at school. They were very easily sitting in front of that device that their children had, and they were able to engage. I'm going to jump back and forth here because the narrative kind of presents itself in that way. I want to jump forward to September of 2021. Then we had our community transmission for the first time since back in 2020. And Georgetown Primary School was the first school that went into lockdown. And I remember speaking with the principal there, Mrs. Danvers, and she was so excited, not because they were locked down, obviously, but she was so excited with the number of parents that were engaged in their PTA meeting. They had something like 90, almost close to 96 or 97% of their parent population engaged. So those are the types of side benefits that we're seeing, in addition to the hard quantitative numbers that we're looking at in terms of the engagement by teachers, by students as well.
So is the primary, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying here. So in terms of the laptops, your lessons learned had to do with having a unified platform, and kind of what information or what connection points you were able to make with students academically, right? So lessons learned, using which items. But I imagine there are some problems that come as well with managing a laptop program or a device program of any kind. I mean, look, these are kids. And I remember the first time I dropped the phone, I think I cried. I couldn't afford another phone. It was the price of a quarter of a car or something. So, point being that there are also challenges as well that you guys have had to manage in the schools themselves. How's that part worked?
Yeah, so I mean, like you rightly said, there are always challenges, and there'll always be challenges when there are resources that are being given to students, loaned out to students, or generally being used in school. So one of the things that we did quite early was have a user agreement with students and parents to kind of identify, to say, well, look, we understand, obviously, these are devices, mistakes will happen, accidents will happen. But if we can determine that there's willful destruction of this property or damage to this property, then you'll be held liable, right? Or you may be held liable. So we're managing that through our Ministry of Education IT team. It's an extension of what they already did in terms of some user agreements that they would have done for teachers and so on. But we have now extended it, obviously, to students as they have taken on these laptops.
So that's the physical part, but also in terms of training and coaching and support, have they had to do that as well?
Absolutely, yeah. So we identified, and schools, we did it in a number of tiers. So we would have had schools doing it at their level, engaging with their parents. Then we had additional documentation and policies and guidance that would have gone out to schools to distribute to parents as well. And then we would have had online clips that people could access at any time, because it isn't just for the parents and the students, but also we have to think of teachers who are now utilizing their devices to engage in this remote teaching. So it was a bit more as well for them in terms of, well, look, this device that you've been using to do your PowerPoints and to go and research stuff and so on, we're now saying, well, we need you to access Seesaw, we need you to access this particular platform or this tool or this resource. And you will have students in a virtual setting. You'll need to be able to share your screen. So all of those types of things were the little things as well that help to make the remote learning experience a little bit easier. Straight off the bat, when we closed down, our schools provided up to 2 weeks of paper instruction. So paper packs went home with students, and then we transitioned to the computers. And teachers never stopped working, but in all of that, and in supporting their own families and making sure they themselves were well, they had to transition and learn a little bit more about how do we deliver instruction in this remote environment. So the support, we tried to provide it as best as we could, the support for them.
So how do you feel it went? I mean, we're where we are now, but how did it go?
I think they did more than an admirable job, because here's what, we have these professionals who are doing their absolute best for these young people, and introducing a tool that we are saying to you, we've always promoted the use of technology where appropriate. So we don't promote necessarily the use of technology for using technology's sake, right? I come from an IT integration background. That's my first love. And I always used to think to myself, am I talking myself out of a job when I tell teachers this? Because you're not just using it for using its sake, right? But then they are now being told, well, every day you have to use this tool, and you're using this tool for the majority of your professional practice. I think, they did extremely well. Did we learn a number of lessons, and did things go wrong? Definitely. Did students, fall asleep while in front of the camera, or did someone walk behind, in their tank top and run out of the frame quickly? These things happened, of course. But I think we learned from a number of those things, and we started to implement then very quickly certain policies and procedures, for families to be held accountable to, and for our staff and our students to make sure that the main focus of what they're doing is the instruction and the learning.
And hopefully we're seeing a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel with COVID and the pandemic and shutdowns and things like this. But I think it's safe to say that the increased use of devices and internet and learning is probably something that's going to be here to stay. So what does this program look like going beyond COVID? And also baked into that, what are some of the realities you're seeing financially and logistically with, now that you bought all the brand new devices, and then they tend to get old pretty quick, in terms of maintaining and repairing and having this regular capital investment?
Yeah. So, Cabinet was very clear when they voted the money last year, or the year before. Sorry, I feel as if I've lost the year. They were very clear when that money was made available that we have to include. First, money was provisioned for maintenance and updates of infrastructure and so on. But then going forward, of course, for the program to be sustainable, we have to include that within our budget requests. So we will continue to do that. We're monitoring, the first kind of full year of it by the end of this academic year, and we'll be in a better position to understand, with the metrics coming back from the IT team, the number of devices that might have been damaged or destroyed, and the level of connectivity, because we can measure those types of metrics as well. What it is that students are actually doing when they log on, the sites they're going to through our filters and those content filters and so on. So we'll be in a much better position. But the main thing for us is, what is it that we want to do as non-negotiables in terms of utilizing this technology? What are the day-to-day expectations for utilizing this technology? So we're working with our principals, working with our specialists to identify some of those things, because we recognize, and we might talk about this a little bit later, we recognize, of course, things like the learning loss that has occurred. We recognize we want to make sure that the students make adequate, not just progress, but attainment. And in all of those things, it comes around to what are the priorities and what are the things that are most critical that this particular tool, or these tools, because this isn't just the computer, of course, but these tools can do to help us to reach that particular milestone, or those milestones that we've set. In addition to the devices, the laptops, we had an issue very early on as well with access, internet access. So some homes didn't have internet access, they had low bandwidth, etc. So we very quickly partnered with the internet service providers who came on board and provided some support to families to get that type of connectivity going. And we are currently in discussion with our IT team about what that looks like moving forward, because we recognize that while we have some laptops available as loaners to families if they're having those challenges, we want to have a more sustainable model. Instead of having to give out, take back if necessary, shuffle around, we want to look at a more sustainable model. So discussions are ongoing with that. So it isn't just the devices themselves, but the means to actually connect and access the resources that are available. I think that's extremely critical. So that's a piece that factors in terms of what we're looking at for budget expenditure and everything else, Patrick.
Thanks. And we could talk about this all day, at least I could. But we do have another major program that the government schools rolled out at the beginning of this school year, and that's the school meals, free school meals program, where started off in the primary schools, where every student gets breakfast, lunch, and a snack. And then after Christmas and during the spring semester, it was rolled out to the secondary schools as well. So now it's a system-wide initiative. And just to give people an idea of the scope of the program, it was estimated to cost around $16 million a year. And then I'll leave with the big caveat that this was something that obviously we haven't done before. So from the very beginning, there was this asterisk that this is going to be a learning experience for everybody, and there's going to be some trial and error, and the program is going to be adjusted as lessons are learned. So again, this is something that in the inspection reports, almost universally, the teachers or the senior leaders will bring up the school meals program as a success, as a way to keep students engaged, as a way to promote attendance. So again, same with the laptop program. What are the metrics that you guys are using to determine if this major program is a success or not, and what are you seeing?
Yeah, so and again, to put some context around the meals program, it was always intended for both primary and secondary rollout. But in terms of impact, the first move would have been to primary, and then of course bringing the secondary on. So secondary were always envisaged to participate in this program. You know, one of the things that we discussed in terms of the rollout of the program is whether there should be a focus on those most in need versus across the board. And we talked about the whole idea of ensuring that even if there is a perception, even if we do a needs assessment and you determine that a family can afford to do it, you want to make sure that everyone has the equal opportunity to access meals, to have the ability to access meals if they need to. And the good thing about the program is that in terms of the spend, it's not a static amount that we're saying, it's a fixed spend, irrespective of who takes it. The spend is really based on the number of students that actually participate in the program. So the billing is based on the number of meals that are actually served. So while we have a figure of maybe about 16 million, we'll see at the end of the year what that spend was based on the uptake. What are we seeing? We are seeing right off the bat a number of students who would not have been in a position to receive meals from home that would have been supported by our very, very upstanding and worthwhile private sector partners like Feed Our Future and the other entities that did this feeding program for so many years. And we're so thankful and grateful to them. But we are seeing now more students accessing meals. What that does, of course, as you rightly pointed out, is that it helps with their engagement, especially very early on in the day when students are hungry and unable to focus. You have then the ability for them to access some meals and be in a better frame of mind to learn throughout the day. From a metric standpoint, in terms of measurement, certainly the number of meals that are served, but we also want to look at the quality of the meals. So very early on in the program, you'll see, well, even now with the primary program, every now and again, you'll see someone post something on social media about this is what is being served, that's what's being served. And we continue to work with the meal providers. We have a team over at the Ministry of Education, and they're working with the meal providers. We work in conjunction with the nutritionists at HSA to do inspections in terms of the quality of the provision. We have actual food standards that have been in place for in excess of 10, 15 years now. So the meal providers have to adhere to those things. So we'll be checking against those things as well, whether they're meeting the dietary requirements, the quality of the meals, the number of students on the uptake. Some lessons learned from it, because I know our time might be slipping away. We've seen schools identify the need for some additional support in the morning, especially when a number of students are on campus and they are taking meals from a supervision standpoint. So we're looking at how we can better support that to make sure that students can uptake with the meals and at the same time be in a safe and secure environment while teachers arrive at school. We're also seeing the introduction of the portal for pre-ordering, which will cut back on the amount of waste that inevitably will happen with a program like this in its infancy. So with that introduced, we are seeing a better system of planning and less wastage with regard to the meals. So within the first couple of months, a very steep learning curve, but I think we are seeing the benefit of it, especially where families were in positions where they might have been in lockdown. I'm taking it back now to early September 2021, when families were in lockdown and we had to figure out, well, how do we get meals and so on. And the students who were already signed up on the program, we were able to get the meals delivered to them. So these are the types of benefits that we are seeing from this type of initiative.
So as we, sorry about,
You're back.
I muted myself because of the leaf blower outside. So as we look at things like the the price of gas going up and the cost of living increasing currently, you guys are really going to have to keep tabs on a lot of these types of things, because I might have been okay last year, but next year my
Absolutely.
need to tap into these programs for the support of my kids could dramatically increase or change. So how much and I guess this is a bit of a operational question, but it sounds to me like you guys spend an awful lot of time having to do check-ins and data analysis and really touch over and over again with the different programs and things you're working on to see how they're doing, how it works, how it doesn't. Is that what your job is?
What my job is, or what the job is?
What the job
What
is.
you do around here, Mr. Ray?
Mr. DES.
Yeah.
What do you do every week?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, and you talk year to year, but really April it's month to month, or it could be week to week, where someone this week they're not signed up on the program, but they realize, oh well, no, gas is now $6.60 whatever. So I need to get into this program. So we are having the signups coming on a rolling basis. But yeah, we have to monitor it, because we have to understand the metrics behind it and to be able to make better decisions, because at the end of the day, I mean, we can't make decisions with a dearth of information. We have to have data-driven decisions being made. And the only way to do that is to monitor and figure out what's happening, so we can plan. But and again, even that is a process, because what we think we need, you might realize, well, actually we need to also get this, this, and this. So then you're always moving and gathering data, and as you would expect with COVID happening during this academic year, there was a lot of data crunching by schools with regard to absences and reasons why students were out. Some of it, COVID illness not able to engage in remote learning, COVID illness, remote learning taking place, COVID fear. I mean, we have a whole range of data collection points that we are now working through and understanding a little bit more about what happened and what, kind of the impact that has on our achievement and our progress.
Yeah, and kind of bouncing off on the just the bigger idea of COVID and affecting students. You had mentioned before we started rolling the cameras that this is something that you're getting feedback on from schools right now. So this is the subject of learning loss in students. Students, when students miss time at home, they're in isolation. They might miss some classes because they're sick. Maybe there's disruptions to the teachers, but all over the world, not just Cayman, people are seeing learning loss in students due to COVID. And that's where, say, for example, you have a fourth grader or year 4 student is going through year 4 during COVID, then they measure how they are at the end of the year, and oh man, they didn't progress as much as you thought they would. And some measure it in terms of time. So say, oh wow, they're 3 months behind where we would have expected them to be. So what does learning loss look like right now in Cayman schools? What are you seeing?
So we're right in the middle of our data meetings now. And we've had our first round of data meetings with our high schools. And right after the break, we'll be jumping in with the primary schools. But one of the big things that the primary schools have identified is, when they started to do the testing and they looked at, what was predicted from our CAT test. I don't know if I'm sure you're familiar with the CAT test. What was predicted and where students are, and then they look at the other test assessments that our teachers are doing. They're recognizing the need for interventions, and they picked it up quite early because they would have utilized some of the data from the end of last year and then started at the beginning of this year. So some of the interventions that they would have put in place, I think we will get a sense of what that looks like closer to the end of the academic year, as the next assessment period comes around. But schools have been doing a phenomenal job in terms of making sure that they go above and beyond with everything else that's happening, that they go above and beyond for students. So teachers are coming in early, they're working through their break periods, they're working through lunch, they're staying after school, they're doing evening sessions, they are getting year groups together and doing master classes. So computer science, we're teaching arrays and programming, and this particular IT teacher is stronger on arrays. So everybody comes together, they're doing that masterclass, and the other teachers are supporting with, helping students to work through the information. So a range of strategies are being employed. And what we will see from the data meetings is, what the progress looks like, because generally we are looking at 2 sub-levels of progress in a particular school year. We'll see what the progress looks like, and then we'll certainly see what the attainment looks like, because we have to appreciate that while we may not have students who may be attaining at the level they should be, the progress that they have made has been phenomenal. So that's always the discussion that we're having, and we're looking forward to seeing what our primary schools tell us.
So I'm processing what you've just said, and I'm thinking to myself, these teachers, and Patrick and I talked about this recently on EDBEAT. While there is a degree of engagement and joy and fun in learning and sharing knowledge and teaching, this also sounds exhausting. I mean, it doesn't sound like they're really getting a chance to heal, if you will, because it's been a tough couple of years.
Yeah, and here's the narrative that we are hearing from our principals. We recognize obviously that teachers do what they do because they love it, You know, and there's some teachers who are just volunteering their own time, even as exhausted as they are and as tired as they are, and with all the things that they have to do for their own families and their own well-being, they are still so focused on the students. So what that means is that we have a responsibility to try to provide opportunities for them to recuperate, to rejuvenate, to come back better and stronger. And hopefully we can find more ways to do that. But schools have been engaging and doing that. Schools have had, time when they have team outings, and they'll go out to dinner or whatever it may be. Or you may have a teacher who may be experiencing some severe burnout, but they can cover within their own year group, or the school can provide cover, so they're able to get that day to kind of recuperate. But little things, but we need to really focus, and not just as the Department of Education, Ministry of Education, but as a country, we have to recognize what is it that we can do to help teachers survive through this period. So if you have any private sector entities out there who are listening, we accept gift cards, we accept discounts for teachers, but on a serious note, we really have to make sure that our teachers are well, because they are giving of their time in many cases without even a question to their own well-being. And it's not a sustainable model, but the appreciation that I have for them, I can't really put into words.
I don't even know what to say, because now I'm all like, oh, that's good. Patrick's like, oh, you're a softie. I'm like, but I am. But and my parents were educators too, right? So it is true that, yes, it's a job, and people sometimes get paid a little bit of money, but it's also a calling as well. And I don't know very many teachers and administrators, for that matter, who've been through kind of what we've seen in Cayman over the past couple of years. So, well, I should say in the world the past couple of years. So it has been a really challenging time. It's a cliche, I know now, but the truth is, yes, it's not been the easiest. And as we start to transition, hopefully, toward our new version of normal, there are lessons that are going to be coming there as well along the way. And trying to balance all of these different needs is definitely something that, the more good ideas on the table, the better.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we want to engage with our schools, with our wider community, to really understand what it is that we need to do better for next year. We've put a number of things in place. We have resources in place. We have protocols in place. We have the procedures, the non-negotiables. We have the, laws. Whatever from the theoretical and legal and our what's expected of us from that standpoint. We have those things in place. What we need to really look at is prioritizing the mental and emotional wellness of our students and our teachers, while still making sure that we are able to deliver the instruction that we are required to deliver. So those things operating in balance, and prayerfully, we are rid of a lot of the COVID challenges that we've had this year. So when we start the new year, those will be the things that we really have to focus on, making sure people are well, that they're healed, really, from what they would have gone through.
As I click the button, any final thoughts before we wrap things up?
From me or Patrick? From me?
Well, Patrick always has extra thoughts. But you first, then Patrick.
Well, again, it's just a matter of, and I don't say this just for government school teachers. I should have made that clear. Every teacher in Cayman has worked extremely hard. So our appreciation goes out not just to our government colleagues, but certainly those in the private sector. I thank you from the bottom of my heart, because irrespective of where you are from, irrespective of your country of origin, you are Caymanian students. You're in Cayman's schools, so you are our students. So we thank the teachers, we thank the administrators for everything they've done, and we'll continue to support you as best as possible.
Thank you much. All right, young Patrick. Thank you so much, Mark. I'm going to let you go unless Patrick has anything else for you.
I just want to say thank you for appearing on EDBEAT. I've been bugging you since about the time that you were received your promotion. So I'm glad we finally got you on, and I hope that we'll have you on in the near future again to talk about all the other stuff that's going on.
Sounds good. And apologies for taking so long, but we had a little pandemic kind of going on, so that took up a bit of time.
Tiny pandemic, just a little one, just a little bit. All right, thanks again, Mark.
Take good
See you
care.
soon.
Bye-bye.
All righty. It took me a minute to find the button there, Patrick. So yeah, it was kind of interesting. Did we miss anything? Always.
Always. No, I think well, the one question we didn't get a chance to talk about with Mark, but I'll just put this out there to the viewers. They think is recently a member of the community came up to me and said, "Hey, public school meals program seems to be going well. Why don't they give it to private school students too?" And I thought of a few ideological reasons or logistical reasons. But if this is a way to support students and the kids who may not be getting the nutrition that they need at home, as this person reminded me, this isn't a problem that's just limited to public schools. There are private school kids whose parents can't afford to give them the proper nutrition also. So just put that out there, food for thought.
Yeah, it is an interesting question, in a lot of ways, and definitely I think should be explored. Is it just kids who we think are in need, or is it kids who really, don't we want all kids to eat healthy and do well in school? So these are big questions to answer for ourselves. But, at the risk of taking a position, hey, at least we're on the track of putting some money where our mouths are, so to speak, when it comes to kids and meals. I know. I'm so clever.
Yeah, and I guess just on the current, what we're doing is Mark mentioned how they're going through their data meetings, talking about student achievement with school. Well, the current is going through its own data meetings, a meeting of one, or a meeting with me and the education data report, which was released last week, which covers the 2020-2021 school year. And so we'll be rolling out a series of exciting and insightful analyses. So everybody look forward to that.
Definitely so. And the data did come out like right before the holiday. So I admit that I've just now started reading it for real. It's a terrible shame for a reporter to admit, but I ate Easter eggs instead. So now I have to work. So it goes. All right. Well, thanks. Yeah. No, I gave up the Peeps this year. And my microwave is happier for it. Anyway, thanks so much, Patrick, as always. And of course, check out Cayman Current online for the latest in education news. And yeah, we'll see you next time.